Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our fifth annual Health Education and Alzheimer's Disease Talks, also known as HEAD Talks. I am Jackie Seth, Physical and Mental Health Chair of the Columbia Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We have a fantastic event planned in partnership with the phenomenal chapter within Maryland, the Annapolis Alumnae Chapter. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today we will share information about Alzheimer's disease in a TED Talk fashion in collaboration with Can Dream Foundation, Johns Hopkins Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and Live Now Fitness. So before we begin, I want to share a little housekeeping. If you have any questions, you can feel free to use the raised hand function, or you can provide any reaction to the event if you're excited or want to clap. Feel free to use that same one. If you're not talking, we ask that you mute yourself. And if you'd like to come on video when you do, or when you are acknowledged as a person who can speak, feel free to come on video and unmute yourself after using the raised hand function. We are monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, you can put them there as well, and we will feel free to recognize them. Okay, through today's discussion, we hope you will gain an understanding of some of the earliest cognitive changes that occur in Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. That frequent memory loss is not a normal part of aging. Because early detection matters, we will show you how to recognize the signs of mild cognitive decline in yourself and others. We will also discuss keys to living healthier and longer, as well as introduce you to Tai Chi. I'm very excited about that. Our guests today are Corinne Pettigrew with Johns Hopkins Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, Ann Benjamin with the Columbia Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and Joanne Ciprio, the Physical and Mental Health Chair of the Annapolis Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So thank you so much for joining us at Head Spurts. Before we begin, I just want to state a couple of facts. I don't know if you're aware, but November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And Alzheimer's is more prevalent in women and twice as prevalent in African Americans as it is other races. So this is an important topic that we'd like to bring attention to. And we have this discussion in order to increase that awareness. So we really appreciate you participating in this conversation. And we really look forward to hearing what our presenters have to say today. Before we begin our conversation, I would like to give you 10 words for you to remember. I don't want you to write them down. I just want you to remember them if you can. This is if you'd like to play along. The first word being table, sofa, car, love, eagle, courage, desk, chair, truth, and keys. I want to give those to you again. Again, don't write them down. Just try to remember them. Table, sofa, car, love, eagle, courage, desk, chair, truth, and keys. Okay. So allow me to introduce our first presenter. Corinne Pettigrew is a PhD and is an assistant professor in the Department of Neurology at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. She leads the outreach, recruitment, and engagement core of the Johns Hopkins Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Her research focuses on risk and protective factors that may influence vulnerability to cognitive decline and the development of clinical symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So I have a poll for us as we begin that I want to launch for you all. And so it should come on your screen right now. The question is, do you know what mild cognitive impairment, or MCI, is? Okay, our answers are rolling in. I'm going to give a little bit of time because we have about 50%. We've already completed it. The question again is, do you know what mild cognitive impairment, or MCI is. Okay. All right. I'm going to end the poll now. Oops, some people keep coming, so wait. I'm going to give it another second. We might make it to 100% if 3 more folks go ahead. All right. Ready? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So I want to share the results with you. It looks like there's about 26% who do know what NCI is. A little under 9% who says yes, and I know someone with NCI. Around 47% of the majority of us kind of know what NCI is, but not sure. And there's a few of us who have never heard of it. And that's why we're happy that you're here with us today, because we want to share information about this topic. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and toss it over to Corinne.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Does that look right, or is that the no? No, is that
looks great.
All right. So is that warrant, fear of sharing your background of your 2-year-old or something who's now sick?
I agree.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. As Jackie mentioned, my name is Corinne Pettigrew. I'm with the Johns Hopkins Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and I am thrilled to kick off tonight's 5th annual Head Talks talking about mild cognitive impairment. My hope is to give you an overview of what MCI is and why early identification and diagnosis is important. So as we get older, we know that changes occur in all parts of our body, and this includes the brain. What this means is that as we get older, we experience slight changes in memory and thinking abilities, and this is experienced by almost everyone. You can see from the green lines on this figure here, on this kind of cartoon figure, that the changes are variable from person to person. They might be a little bit steeper of a decline in some individuals compared to others. But generally, the cognitive changes that occur in normal aging are subtle and most affect thinking speed and attention. So just some examples of what might be affected. It might be a little bit, individuals of older ages might be a little bit slower to recall information. So for example, coming up with names, it might take a little bit more effort to learn and store new memories. Older adults often are more susceptible to distraction or may have greater difficulty multitasking, so to trying to complete more than one task at the same time. But again, these changes are relatively subtle, and notice that it doesn't include obvious examples of forgetting, since major issues with forgetting are not considered a part of normal aging. Now, importantly, the changes that occur with normal aging are different from those that occur with mild cognitive impairment. So this is illustrated here with the blue line, which shows that the individuals with MCI, mild cognitive impairment, demonstrate clear changes in memory or other cognitive abilities, such as language or visuospatial skills. What you'll also notice is in MCI, the changes that occur are a decline from a prior level of performance. Most importantly, they're noticeable to the person affected and or their family or friends, close family or friends. But these changes, while noticeable, are not severe enough to interfere with an individual's ability to live independently and carry out everyday tasks and activities such as shopping, cooking, and driving. Now, one of the primary factors that differentiates cognitive changes due to MCI is that they may occur frequently or affect recent or familiar activities. So just some examples of some symptoms of MCI that might include losing things often, so misplacing your wallet every couple days or so, forgetting recent conversations or events, or forgetting to go to appointments, having more frequent trouble coming up with words relative to other individuals of your same age, or getting lost in or having trouble driving to a familiar location. From a statistics standpoint, it's estimated that about 12 to 18% of individuals aged over 60 are living with mild cognitive impairment. But I think one of the issues is that MCI often goes unrecognized and is likely underdiagnosed. So what causes MCI? Sometimes MCI is a symptom of brain changes resulting from neurodegenerative diseases that cause dementia, such as Alzheimer's disease. So that's a mouthful. Let's break it down a little bit. We know that dementia is an umbrella term that refers to different types of brain diseases that cause changes in memory loss and thinking. Examples include Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, frontal temporal dementia, and others. So in some cases, as shown by the dark blue line transitioning to the red line in this figure, MCI may be a transition stage between normal aging and dementia. In other words, it's an early stage along the dementia continuum. What differentiates MCI from dementia, however, is that in dementia, cognitive impairments interfere with an individual's ability to carry out everyday activities. So again, those activities being things like shopping, driving, and cooking. It's estimated that about 1/3 of individuals living with MCI will develop Alzheimer's disease, or with MCI due to Alzheimer's disease, will develop dementia within 5 years. So just to provide a more concrete example, we now know that in dementia, some of the disease-related brain changes begin years to decades before an individual even exhibits any cognitive symptoms. So what this means is that a person with mild cognitive impairment may have an abnormal accumulation of what are called amyloid plaques outside their brain's nerve cells, as well as tau neurofibrillary tangles inside their brain's nerve cells, which results in changes in cognition. If MCI is due to early stages of vascular dementia, as a different example, an individual may be experiencing disrupted flow of blood or disruptive supply of oxygen to the brain, resulting in early damage to blood vessels. But you might have noticed that in this same figure here, there's a solid light blue line that's declining, but that reflects an individual who has a stable MCI diagnosis, does not transition to dementia. And this is because MCI does not always lead to dementia. We don't have a really good understanding of why this is the case, but it's a really important area of active research, that is to understand the factors that are protective against future cognitive decline, whether it be cognitive decline in normal aging or cognitive declines from MCI to dementia. However, it's really important to note that the cognitive changes characteristic of MCI can also be caused by other medical or mental health conditions, some of which are treatable. So for example, acute infections such as urinary tract infections, mental health concerns, depression, stress, anxiety, untreated sleep apnea, side effects from interacting medications or too many medications, or over-consuming alcohol, deficiencies in vitamin or thyroid levels. These conditions can all cause symptoms that look like MCI, but once treatment is received, those symptoms then may resolve themselves. So this makes it extremely important to talk to your doctor if you have concerns about changes in your memory or other cognitive abilities. Because although some changes do come with age, we shouldn't ignore changes in memory or thinking that concern us. So if you or others are developing concerns about changes in cognition, talk to your doctor, who may do a medical evaluation for mild cognitive impairment. This would likely include a detailed medical history, so the doctor should be asking about current symptoms, previous medical conditions, medications that you're taking, and family history of dementia. It'd likely include a physical and neurological exam to assess your nerves, reflex, things like movement, coordination, balance, and senses. It's likely going to include some short tests of mental status for determining whether your performance is lower than might be expected given your age, sex, and educational attainment. And then lastly, it'll likely include questions about your ability to function independently and perform daily activities without assistance. From there, your doctor may refer you to a memory specialist or conduct additional tests to understand the source of cognitive changes. That is, are these changes due to something that's potentially treatable? So this might include an evaluation of mood, for example, assessing symptoms of depression, might include blood tests for assessing vitamin or thyroid levels, or it may even include brain imaging to rule out things like stroke or brain bleeding or tumor. And most likely, they're going to have you undergo some sort of annual follow-up for determining whether your cognition is stable or worsening, or perhaps even improving. So if you take nothing else from my presentation, I hope you take away that the point that early detection is important. It's important because it allows us to rule out conditions that are treatable. Additionally, we're in a new phase of treatments for early Alzheimer's disease, which is another talk in itself. But what we are seeing is that when people initiate these treatments, they're more effective, likely more effective when they start early. That is before there's a lot of disease-related brain changes. Additionally, early detection is important for families and individuals to have time to plan for the future. So this includes making sure medical and financial wishes are in order, but also ensuring that you're paying attention to the effects of mild cognitive impairment, including, for example, making sure your driving is okay, and there's no additional danger there. And then also it also provides opportunities to participate in research studies. So there are a number of studies, as you might imagine, examining new treatments for the earliest stages of Alzheimer's disease, whereas other types of studies are designed to study to understand the progression of MCI and risk factors and brain changes that are associated with it. But I want to acknowledge that it's a courageous move to have difficult conversations with your family and your doctor about concerns about changes in cognition. And these are courageous conversations because we know there's stigma attached to memory loss. We know there's stigma attached to dementia, but we need to overcome that given the benefits of early detection. So finally, as you may know, research on successful medications for early Alzheimer's disease, as I mentioned, including MCI, are in their early stages. But there's several things you can do which may help you reduce your risk of MCI or of progressing from MCI to dementia, because these things are beneficial to the health of your brain. The first is to control vascular risk factors. So manage high blood pressure, manage diabetes and high cholesterol, maintain a healthy weight, and quit smoking. These can be accomplished through a heart-healthy diet, through physical activity, through medications, or a combination thereof. It's also important to stay active. So stay mentally active, volunteer in the community, learn new things, attend really cool events such as this, because learning new things, staying mentally engaged, strengthens brain cells and connections between them. And then we know there's tons of benefits, health benefits to physical activity, but there's also brain health benefits, for example, helping keep good blood flow to the brain. And healthy lifestyles are important for everyone, regardless of any sort of diagnosis you have. But they're particularly important for individuals under stress, such as caregivers. Another thing you can do is consider participating in research because it has many possible benefits. Research participants help those who may be at risk, including themselves and perhaps future generations. They often learn more about the cognitive health and/or the disease that they may be affected by. Oftentimes receive regular monitoring by health professionals, depending on the type of study, and compensation and transportation assistance can often be provided. So with that, and in summary, mild cognitive impairment reflects changes in cognitive abilities that are noticeable to the self or others, but they're not severe enough to interfere with daily activities. It's important to have changes in cognition evaluated by a physician to rule out conditions that may be treatable, because as we discussed, and that's the one thing I hope you remember, early detection has many benefits. And then finally, many of the risk factors that increase our risk of memory loss can be modified, emphasizing the importance of protecting the health of our brain throughout the lifespan, but also as we age. So thank you for your attention, and I do believe I may have a minute or two for questions. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Corinne. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, as we mentioned before. I like to just point out one thing. You talked about using your mental stimulation, and typically when I'm doing this presentation about Alzheimer's to students, at this point, when we talk about mental stimulation, I like to encourage them to do something even tonight that they can do that's different. And so I know everyone at home, we brush our teeth twice a day, right? Everybody goes, yes, yes, yes. So typically we use our dominant hand to do that. I'm right-handed. And so typically I brush my teeth with my right hand. So tonight I challenge all of you to brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand tonight. And you will find that different parts of your brain will have to fire at that point, because it is not as easy to do it with the non-dominant hand. So just something I'd like to give out there for everyone to do tonight when we brush our teeth. So just something to say. We do have a question in the chat about, will the slides be made available? Yes, they will. We will be handing out a virtual goodie bag as such to all our participants today and those who registered with this recording, as well as the slides from today. So yes, thank you for that question. And I'm glad that someone liked my full point about the toothbrush. And the kids don't like it because they're like, brush your teeth twice a day, but yes, we do. Anyway, I do have one question. Oh, I do have one direct message, Corinne. It was about what do I do if a loved one is not being heard by their primary physician?
That's a really hard one. I don't have a good answer except this catty answer to say, find a new primary care physician who wants to be a partner in your health, who will listen to you. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a MD, but just from personal experience, having someone that listens to you is so extremely important, because you better than they do. For they see you once a year, maybe twice. So
I see a hand raised. Pat Waddy, do you mind?
Good evening. Good evening. An excellent presentation. And a follow-on to the issue with your primary care physician not being able to really give you any assistance. If you were to be able to bypass, where do you go? What kind of physician? What kind of assistance? What direction are you going in? If you once you realize that the primary care physician is not not the right one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get further assessment for changes in cognition, I'd suggest either a memory clinic or a geriatrician, perhaps, or a neurologist, someone who can specialize in identifying changes and understanding, has an understanding of dementia and the different types of dementia. Not to say our PCPs don't, but they're general practitioners. So if you have serious concerns, I suggest consider seeing a specialist.
And incidentally, I have given out Corinne's contact information to people. So now you have it, everyone, when you get the slides. So just call Corinne. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Okay, we have another question that says, is there any relation, in which I love this question, to MCI and menopause? I love this question, or perimenopause at that. So go right ahead if you know that, Corinne.
I love this question too. I do believe that there are cognitive changes associated with menopause and perhaps perimenopause as well, but that's going to be more of a hormonal cause of changes in cognition, as opposed to mild cognitive impairment, which is kind of characterized as under the umbrella of possible early stage of dementia. So it's kind of going back to one of the potentially treatable causes of cognitive changes, deficiency in vitamin, or in this case, hormone levels, changes in hormone levels. That's about my level of expertise on that issue, unfortunately. But if there's anyone else here that knows more, please feel free.
I'm taking it because I'm here for it. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
There's one more question in the chat asking about, is there any benefit or recommendation to get your memory assessed while you're cognitively healthy, to give yourself a baseline for any changes across the life course? I do believe that Medicare visits can now include an annual assessment of cognition, and it doesn't hurt to have that done and have that monitored from year to year. If it's part of your visit or part of, I forget exactly what that visit is called off the top of my head, but it can't hurt to have changes in cognition monitored, especially if you have a family history that's making you more concerned than perhaps others your same age.
And with that, Corinne, how much does heredity play in MCI?
Well, that's a good question and a complicated one. So there's essentially two different types of genes that affect your risk of Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia. Some are, if you have that gene, you're very high likelihood of getting dementia. But for those, you'll probably know because they're typically early onset dementias that affect people in their 40s or 50s. There's other genes that increase your risk of dementia, but don't necessarily determine whether or not you will get dementia. And while it increases your risk, I mean, I think the best thing we can do is just maintain the health of our brain and bodies as best we can, stay active as we get older.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. We really appreciate that. All right. Corinne is going to stick around. So even if you have another question that may come to mind right now, you can feel free to continue to put in the chat and she will be able to address it for you. But I want to move on to our next presenter. Soror Ann Benjamin is an educator, emeritus docent, and active volunteer, including serving on the age-friendly Howard County Social Participation Work Group and as a member of the Art Advisory Committee for the Bernice Kish Gallery. Before beginning her 5-year tenure as a volunteer docent with the Baltimore Museum of Art, she created and implemented BANE, Enjoying the Arts, or BETA, a visual and performing arts discussion group, the predecessor of Let's Look Closely, her current visual arts appreciation program for Howard County's older adults that she created and began implementing in 2022. During the early 2000s, Ann was an adjunct instructor at Johns Hopkins University School of Education. She retired from the U.S. Department of Education in 1997 after a successful 30-plus year career in research analysis and application, program management, and policy development. Ann's guiding mantra is, life is a mosaic made of multiple pieces. Each piece is full in itself, and each piece is a stepping stone on the way to the rest of life. I'd like to turn it over to Ann Benjamin.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate your reading my long bio. It was supposed to be short. And after seeing Corinne's, I feel kind of like, ooh, mine is a little bit, But on the other hand, it gives you the background and understanding of how I have come to create the program that I'm going to talk about tonight. Visual arts is my passion. And if I were to have a parallel passion, it's Tai Chi, which I've had the opportunity to practice for over 15 years from the same instructor who is dedicated to helping seniors to age well. I'll talk more about my instructor and Tai Chi later. Right now, I'm going to focus on Let's Look Closely, and as my bio said, it's a program that I created in 2022 in response to what I saw as a docent at the Baltimore Museum of Art, what I felt was needed to really help visitors to become engaged and better understand and appreciate the arts. So I'm going to move on. The program, as I said, is at the Bain 50 Plus Center. As an art appreciation program, I focus on deepening adults' thinking, understanding, and enjoyment of the visual arts by focusing on 3 goals: novel experiences, cognitive stimulation, and social connection. The research speaks to each of the goals that I'm going to discuss and the activities that I offer my participants. No art or art history background is required. Participants are simply asked to bring their curiosity and a deep desire to explore a wide variety of artistic creations. I say that the last part of that, because when I had an arts discussion group from 2014 to 2018 at the Bain Center, one of my participants commented when I showed a beautiful piece of steel sculpture that was in front of the Corcoran in Washington, D.C. His comment was, "That's not art." Well, he said, if it's not a painting, it's not art. And I thought that was really interesting. So he didn't stay very long, but that was okay, because obviously he did not bring his curiosity nor a deep desire to explore a wide variety of artistic creations. As I move along in my discussion of my program, you're going to hear the number of participants that I've been able to retain throughout this first year, and looking forward to some exciting activities for our second year. So quarterly sessions are what I have: fall, winter, spring, and summer, 90 minutes each. They're free at the Bain Center. All you have to do is sign up, and they're advertised in Bain 50 Plus Center's newsletter that's available online. Next slide, please. To figure out whether or not my program would have enough people to attend, I looked at the data and I looked at the trends. As a member of the age-friendly Howard County work group, social participation work group, I had access to the 2020 age-friendly Howard County survey results, which showed that 66% of respondents ages 65 and older rated entertainment, cultural venues, and activities extremely or very important. So it seemed to me like I had a captive audience. By 2030, 20% of Howard County residents will be 65 or older, compared with 15.4% as of July 1, 2022. The residents of Howard County are getting older, and that's what we're seeing across the country. Also, 8,000 residents will be 85 years or older, double the number of individuals in that age group in 2020. So my focus on seniors who are 65 and older, I have a basis for that. Also, what I'm going to tell you later is the story of one participant in my group in particular, who started with me in in my arts discussion group. She started in the early stages of Alzheimer's, stayed with me for 2.5 years. Very proud to be able to share her story through a note that she wrote me. And I will share that when I discuss the feedback that I've received from participants. Next slide, please. Let's look closely. 2022-2023 sessions. I started in October, fall 2022. The theme was rejection and reinterpretation of tradition. I focused on the Impressionists for the full year. So I looked at Paul Cézanne, I looked at the post-Impressionists, but I also looked at some of the original Impressionists, those who, Monet, Degas, the founders of Impressionism. I showed the piece of art that was actually what a critic labeled as, this is not art. This looks like an impression. And that is how the Impressionism movement was formed. Winter of 2023, bringing the past and present together. What I think is important in my sessions is to compare the master artists with the contemporary artists to see how tradition is still carried forth today. Spring of 2023, I gave my participants a field trip to the Bernice Kish Gallery. If you have not visited the Bernice Kish Gallery at the Slayton House, I encourage you to do so. There's an exhibit now of 2 artists that I think you should see, and the exhibit is only up until December 14th. So can't see who's on right now, but if the executive director of the Wild Lake Community Association, who happens to be a soror, In our Columbia chapter, Sharon Cooper Kerr is on. I encourage you to talk with her when you visit. The title of the exhibit that we saw was Growing Towards the Light. At least 12 of my 22 participants attended the exhibit. And when we finished, we walked over to the bagel bin to have a post-show discussion, which lasted for about an hour. The questions that were asked are, what is it that resonated with you in terms of what you heard the artist say, or what it was that you saw in the artist's artwork? What resonated with you? The conversation started with one gentleman saying, the piece by Mary Jo Messenger showing the daffodils in the woods reminded me of growing up and the daffodils that were in the back of my house, the field of daffodils. That started an interesting round table of discussions with everyone sharing what they got out of the experience. That's what I believe is important. You can't get that when you just visit the museum. You need the opportunity to talk. And seniors love to talk. They love to share their perspectives. They love to hear others' perspectives. So that's why I started with an arts discussion group in 2014, 2018. But through my experiences as a docent at the Baltimore Museum of Art, what I came to see was I need to help viewers understand the elements of art. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. What I was able to do in summer 2023 was to bring in an artist who was able to give a retrospective of his work, and he titled it, How Art Impacted a Soldier's Life. Next slide, please. This was the flyer that I asked someone to create. She actually was the former special events coordinator for the Bernice Kish Gallery at Slayton House. And this was the flyer where you can see some of the images that he shared in his retrospective. The artist, Al Beagle, 85 years old, a Holocaust survivor, totally dedicated to not only teaching art, but creating it. His retrospective took us from when he served combat duty in Vietnam, 2 to 3 tours of combat duty, to the present. Next slide, please, to speak to the present. I asked him to come and to do a demonstration of his technique, his impressionistic technique. As I said, the focus of the first year has been on impressionism. Next slide, please. And here we are with the piece that he created when he demonstrated his technique. This is a piece that he created in just a little over an hour. He said it would normally take him 3 hours to create this. And as he was creating, he was talking and taking us through the process that he uses. I know. And there he stands with his wife, Merlin. She came to the session when he gave the PowerPoint of his retrospective, and she came back for him to demonstrate his technique. If you will notice the hand on top of the hand, her hand on top of his hand, 52 years of marriage for the two of them. I think that speaks volumes. And I had the opportunity to stand with him and be gifted with this wonderful piece that I've had framed and will hang in my home as soon as I can get the person in here to hang it for me. Next slide, please. What you're seeing now are the names of 17 artists that I featured throughout this first year. These are names of some artists who are currently exhibiting. Alma Thomas, her work is currently at the Smithsonian's American Art Museum. I'm sorry, Alma Thomas was not included here. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me speak to Al Beagle, whose name you see. Mary Jo Messenger, who I mentioned a few minutes ago. Lydia, now I can't see. I'll just say Linda, the first name, and Catherine, the name of these are 4 artists who the participants in Let's Look Closely had the opportunity to see at the Bernice Kish Gallery. So out of the 17, 4 artists, the participants had an opportunity to talk with, ask questions, look directly at their work. That's an opportunity you don't normally get. And that's one that I just relish. Simply enjoy. 17 names here. Mary Cassatt, she was the leading female impressionist. So I started my first session talking about her and the rejection that she experienced. Simone Lee, in the third name in the third column, her exhibit is at the Hirshhorn right now. And I will actually be there tomorrow to see it. She was the first African-American artist to have her work exhibited at the Venice Biennale, and that was just a year ago. The very first African-American artist in all the years of what's called the Olympics of the art world. Next slide, please. I want to start explaining my program by using a quote that we often hear by Georgia O'Keeffe. To see takes time. Georgia O'Keeffe is known for her abstractions, her figurative abstractions. What she's doing here is showing you the inside of a beautiful, beautiful canna, a lily. She takes you inside by enlarging the petals. Look at how she uses the primary colors, red, blue, yellow, and then she mixes those colors. Absolutely gorgeous work. Next slide, please. What I do in introducing my participants to art, how to better appreciate art, is to explain to them this artist toolbox. As a docent, we would use this with our 4th graders when they would come to visit. A very simple way of taking the palette and saying what the parts of art are: color, line, shape, pattern, texture, space. These are the elements that every artist is trained to use. The physical tools, pencils, paint, clay, brush, and you'll notice even using their fingers. And what's important is they bring their hearts, minds, and imaginations, their ideas, their feelings, their beliefs, their effort. The feelings are what you see in abstraction. A lot of people say, I don't understand it. But when you realize that what an artist is doing is actually expressing their feelings, then you begin to step back and think, I need to know a little bit more about that artist. One of the exhibits that I so much enjoyed giving a tour of was Joan Mitchell's, abstract expressionist, whose work, as she would say, she would just throw that paint up there on the canvas, and she would just slash and mark. And when she finished, you would see this beautiful, beautiful painting that expressed her feelings. As she said, I carried my feelings in my suitcase all of my life. And that's what she would show us in her art. Next slide, please. Studies suggest that museum goers spend less than 30 seconds viewing a work of art. Can you believe that? With a good portion of that time usually spent reading the wall labels. Now, I'm going to ask this question later. But I want you to first tell me, would you even think that 30 seconds is a sufficient amount of time to look at a work of art in a museum? Less than half a minute. What do you see? And especially if you spend the time reading the wall labels, what is it that you actually get out of looking at that work of art? That's one of the things that I try to help my participants to understand. Don't read the wall label first. Look at the artwork. Notice the colors. Notice the shapes. Look at the lines that you can see. But then they're also imaginary lines. They're not always visible. But you can notice by how the artist is directing your light, the light, where the artist is bringing you right onto the canvas. Can you see that in less than 30 seconds? No, absolutely not. Unfortunately, what a lot of visitors think is, I visit the museum to walk through all of the galleries so I can go back home and say all of what I saw. Well, what did they really see? Next slide, please. Museums around the world designate a day in April as Slow Looking Day. This is in response to the research. If people are only spending less than half a minute looking, how can museums, the education department, increase the amount of time that people are looking at art? So every April, museums all around the world are doing just what this is, getting people to look intently at 3 to 5 objects for 10 minutes each. Next slide, please. Slow looking experiences are structured, so viewers are invited to make their own observations. That's really important. You walk away with your own interpretations. You can have a guide. As a docent, I would guide you, but I would never tell you that your view is right or wrong. And if a docent does that, then walk away from that group. Let those observations stimulate your curiosity. Remember, that's what it is that I ask you to bring to the group. And drive the development of your own questions and your interpretation. Next slide, please. Then here you're looking at a group of seniors at the Museum of Modern Art. The docent here, the museum guide, is using what's called visual thinking strategy. Look at how the visitors are engaged. She's asking open-ended questions to get them to do just what you see them doing. Derive their own interpretations and their own understanding. So what is it she would say? Look closely and describe what you see. Another question might be, what do you think is going on here? Tell me, look at the colors. Look at the shapes. Describe what you're seeing. But first, the time is spent just looking. I love this view. Now, if anyone has any idea of the artwork that's on the wall, I'd love to hear it. Since I can't hear your answers, I'm going to tell you. Jacob Lawrence's migration series. That's what's on the walls there. If you don't know about Jacob Lawrence's migration series, you can see the pieces at the Museum of Modern Art, as well as at the Phillips Collection. The two museums have half of Jacob Lawrence's migration series. One museum has the odd numbers and the other museum has the even numbers in the series. Next slide, please. April 2023, this year, marked the National Museum of the Women in the Arts' 10th anniversary, celebrating Slow Art Day. As I said, museums around the world do this. And now the National Museum of Women in the Arts, which just reopened, is exciting that it's been totally renovated, which is there on, I think, about 14th, 15th in New York Avenue. If you have not yet registered, I encourage you to. I'm planning to go early January. Just can't get there right now, but I am definitely looking forward to it. I've been a member for years. During the pandemic, they actually had happy hours, virtual happy hours, I know. And they would actually have a bartender to mix drinks and give the recipe for the drinks. If anybody thinks art is not fun, then you have not had a chance to experience all the different opportunities that are out there. What did the participants say for the April 2023 National Museum of Women in the Arts 10th anniversary? They praised the shared learning event. And they said, I enjoyed learning other people's experiences and seeing more through their eyes. This is what most seniors will say. when they have the opportunity for group discussion about the arts. Your Brain on Art was actually released March of this year. The Baltimore Museum of Art actually had the book launch. It was an exciting opportunity to hear directly from Susan McSalmon, who is on the faculty of Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and Ivy Ross, who's a vice president of Google, and she focuses on design. What are they telling us about the arts? Participation in arts activities like going to museums, concerts, and the theater were found to be associated with lower mental distress, better mental functioning, improved quality of life, slower rate of cognitive decline as we age, and lower risk of developing dementia. This is what we heard Corinne talk about, the importance of looking at ways that we can accomplish all of these. Next slide, please. Daisy Fancourt, a psychobiology and epidemiology researcher at the University College in London, found, now I want you, if you haven't been paying attention, please do so now. People who engage in the arts every few months, such as going to the theater or to a museum, have a 31% lower risk of dying early when compared with those who don't. How did she discover this? Looking at cohort studies. Every 7.5 years, her team has been looking at cohort studies. And this is what they're finding. Even if you bring the arts into your life only once or twice a year, you lower mortality risk by 14%. Her research is on the National Institute of Health's website. I encourage you to read it. I encourage you to go there. And she has a wonderful, wonderful video that you can just pull up by typing her name, and it'll come up. Fancourt theorizes one reason the arts are so effective is because of a theory known as cognitive reserve, which suggests there are multiple factors in our lives that help build the resilience of our brains against neurodegeneration. Next slide, please. The arts actually help to provide cognitively stimulating activities, social support, novel experiences, and opportunities for emotional expression. These factors are a part of cognitive reserve, and they help to build brain resilience. Next slide, please. Evidence across scientific disciplines converges on the same conclusion. This is in addition now to Fancourt's work. This is what's come out of the Surgeon General's advisory. Social connection is a significant predictor of longevity and better physical, cognitive, and mental health. The research is online, and you can read the report. It's less than 60 pages, lots of visuals, but very important information that was gathered and published in his original book, Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. That I would encourage you to sit back and read. Take the time to understand the harm we're doing ourselves and what it is we can do to help each other. This really motivates what I do. Each Let's Look Closely session closes with questions and answers and reflections. I ask 2 questions. First, share with us what you learned today. Get a variety of answers. I love to hear them. And the second, how do you think what you learned will influence the way you view visual arts in the future? One of my participants, I absolutely love this answer that she gave. when I happened to have a conversation with her a few weeks after a session. And she said, Ann, if she's on, she will know that I'm talking about her right now, but I won't say her name. She said, Ann, I never thought about texture. But when I walk by a piece now, I go back and I look more closely. I said, I've done my job. That's what my purpose is. And to hear that, you've made my day. This is some of the feedback that I've received, and it's by session. So my very first session, the chair of the Wild Lake Village Board of Directors, Kevin McAlilly, attended. And I can say that he's actually come to every session. So I think I might be doing something right there. And this is what he had to say. Thanks for the wonderful and thought-provoking class at the Bain Center. I have been spreading the news about how delightful and personally satisfying my experience was. I look forward to the next one. Carolyn Jackson, as I mentioned, I will juxtapose a piece of art, a contemporary piece, with a piece created by a master. So this is a comment that Carolyn made in relationship to what I did. One of the most interesting pieces was Luncheon on the Grass by Edward Manet. Looking closely, you had to ask yourself, why was she naked and the men fully clothed? Now, if you haven't seen the piece, you have to go look at it now that you've read this. In Micheline Thomas's present-day version, the women are fully clothed. It gave me pause to question how differently males and females saw a harmless lunch in the park. I love that. I love that she walked away from that session thinking like that. Next quote, please. This is a quote by a woman who attended the session at the Bernice Kish Gallery, the gallery talk. The three artists, one being Mary Jo Messenger, and this was her point here. I especially like Mary Jo's picture of the hospital worker, the details of his facial expression, hands, bracelet, and name tag. I left this experience with a desire to take a closer look as I notice God's beauty in nature. I see and hear the birds, trees, and animals anew. I look more closely at more things now. I took the time to read that to you, mainly because in your brain on art, art is defined broadly. It includes nature. Next slide, please. Al Beagle, this was a quote. I thought I would take a different slant on getting participants' feedback. So I asked, and this was his statement. During several tours of combat duty in Vietnam, painting provided the means to find mental solace and tranquility. This is the first time I've given a lecture that includes my artwork. He generally would have exhibits, solo exhibits or group exhibits. I'm doing this because this lady, Anne, asked me to. I'm planning to do more. This was a comment from a woman who was in my original arts discussion group and has continued now with what I'm doing with Let's Look Closely. Artist Alfred Beagle mentioned how painting keeps him from thinking about the issues of the world. Sometimes we need to remove ourselves to protect ourselves from too much attention to the issues of our world. After listening to Al, I understand how important art can be for our health and well-being. And the last comment is by the former director of the Bain 50+ Center. I received this statement from her just a week or two before she retired. Everyone speaks so highly of this program, and of course you. Next slide. This I'm going to actually share with you the front of this card. I'm not sure if you can see it. I think that might be as good as I can get here. This is a card, and I'm going to read this. I mentioned at the beginning that one of the members of my group was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and this was for 2.5 years that she was with me. Dear Anne, I'm sure all the girls in our group are sorry to see you go, just as I am. At the same time, they also are glad to see you, as you see in all caps, moving on up with an exclamation mark. We expect to hear good things about you. I have told you how much I enjoyed and learned from the activities you have had in our group. I am going to miss you, not just because of the places to which we went and the information we learned, but your depth of knowledge to make everyone feel at home. Thank you so much for everything, and may God bless you. 2.5 years after she started and told me she was in the early stages, this was the card she wrote. Are there any signs here? Are there any signs here of dementia? Next slide, please. 5 key takeaways. And I'm not going to read these. I'm going to let you read them. Take your time, read them. And when I get to the end, I'll say next slide. Next slide, please. The quote that I started with in discussing my program, "To see takes time," is actually extracted from this full statement by Georgia O'Keeffe. I'll read this. In a way, nobody sees a flower. Really, it is so small. We haven't time. And to see takes time, like to have a friend takes time. Georgia O'Keeffe. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you about Let's Look Closely. I'm so much enjoying what I'm doing. And with the new director, Tammy Wiggins, we really have a partnership. There's a real collaboration and a desire to bring to the seniors of Howard County all the opportunities to enjoy and appreciate the visual arts. Thank you so much, Jackie. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
My goodness, thank you so much. And that was phenomenal. I'm going to speak on behalf of everyone and say that I can't wait to go to the museum and see this. And I'm going to look at art so much more differently, because I believe I was probably one of those people who look at it quickly. And that statistic was very interesting to me. What was the statistic again? How much time did we take?
Less than 30 seconds. It's actually 23.6 seconds.
23.6 seconds. That is
23.6 seconds. And if you'll notice, for those, I think you're going to be sharing the slides.
yes.
So I give the sources. If anyone wants to go back and see what's the source for that statistic, I'd be happy to share more information.
Thank you so much. So if anyone has any questions, oh, we have a hand raised. Brianne, would you like to come off mute and share your question?
Yes. Hi, Ms. Benjamin. That was a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
My question is, how did you discover your passion for art?
I love that question. I've been asked that many times because I'm not an artist. I've taken many art classes. What I found early in life was just visiting museums and art galleries. I would feel differently when I left than I did when I went in. And I couldn't explain that feeling. I just knew I felt better than I did when I went in. So I kept doing it. I just kept going and going. Then I would go to panel discussions, artist panel discussions. I go to artist talks. I took classes. I didn't feel what I wanted to when I was creating, but I did when I would take art history classes and learn the background and the stories behind the art. So all of that is what shaped. You remember at the beginning, I said that life is like a mosaic? That's
Yes.
really my mosaic. So that's where I started, was just go. And now, as I mentioned, I'll be at the Hirshhorn tomorrow. And luckily, I'll be with a friend who is a docent at the Smithsonian's African Art Museum. So I'll get to share with her and we can talk back and forth. That'll be fun.
Oh wow. Yeah, thank you so much. I love that. The stories behind the art. I think that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brianne. I agree with you wholeheartedly. If you have any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you if you have a comment or anything. We have a lot of comments in the chat and about how wonderful it was. And the presentation was amazing and the painting was so vibrant. And so we really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Should I apologize that I have to step away for a minute?
Well, that was what I was about to say. So everyone, we have exciting part 2 to Anne's presentation because she is going to introduce us to Tai Chi. For the moment, she's going to step off camera and we're going to allow her the moment to get ready for that session. And while she does that, we are going to bring Corinne back to the stage as if this is a whole show. We're going to bring you back to the stage, Corinne. And remember those words I asked you to remember earlier? Maybe, kind of. So, Corinne, take us through the exercise and let's see how many words we can remember.
All right, so let's go back to the start, just as something fun. When Miss Jackie read you listed 10 words, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write them down or remember as many as possible.
We get 15 seconds to get the pen.
Sure, we'll do a minute. We'll do a minute. That's a good idea. And no pressure, just a fun game while we're transitioning. Oh wait, don't write them on. Okay. So I'm going to start the timer now.
Okay, great.
Uh-oh. Can you see the writing on the screen?
Brianne, I think you're writing.
You're showing everyone the words.
Brianne, you're telling everyone the words. Oh no, I don't know how to make it stop.
There, that'll stop it.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
So excited to share them. It's fine.
I'm glad that you remembered a few. So everybody got a little bit of head start.
All right, I lost my timer when I stopped. Oh, no, I didn't. About 15 more seconds. All right, so we'll call it there. I want to start by saying that note that this activity is in no way designed to be diagnostic of memory and changes, but instead just provides an example of something you might do when, for example, having your memory assessed by a doctor or in a research study or killing time between presentations during an event. But list learning tests such as these assess one's ability to remember items over time with distracting activities intervening, in this case, both of the presentations you saw tonight. So in case you're curious, here's the list of words, and note that I've kind of organized them with some groupings. The words in the left column, there's some related items: table, sofa, desk, chair. Maybe those were a little bit easier to remember because you can kind of visualize them, not only visualize these concrete words, but visualize them together, maybe in a living room or an office. There's some other concrete words that you can also visualize: car, eagle, keys, but maybe you didn't remember those because although they're easy to visualize, you can't kind of group them with the others. And then there were some abstract words, maybe harder to remember because it's harder to use memory strategies for, though the idea of memory strategies is a totally separate talk in itself. So hopefully you found that at least a little bit amusing. If you'd like to share how you did in the chat, you're welcome to.
Thank you, Corinne. Yes, I would like folks to just go ahead and let us know how many words did you come up with? If you want to put in your chat, like I came up with 1 or 5 or 10 or whatever. Okay, great. We have 6. That's really good.
That's impressive. I'm pretty sure I don't think I would have remembered any of them, honestly.
Listen,
maybe like 2 or
7. Oh, wow.
Man,
You guys are rocking. 5. Way to go. I probably would have got too.
That's what I think for me as well, Jackie.
What is the average that we could have assumed?
Oh, I mean, that's I don't even know how to answer that, given it was so long between when we presented the words initially and asked people to recall them.
Right. Well, I like that this was an example, because I think a lot of times when we're thinking about memory and the testing, we think it could be scary. And now I feel like it's not as scary as I thought it could be, because it may be similar activities like this.
Yeah.
Would that be fair?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. You didn't remember any of the abstract words. You're totally right. And another thing to consider is, for example, in a research study setting, the tasks are designed to be difficult, to challenge you, because if they were too easy, then everyone would just perform at ceiling. Everyone would get all the words right, and that doesn't tell us anything. So having longer lists to remember with distractions in between is done intentionally to, kind of challenge individuals and see how they do.
Right. And so do not feel any kind of way if you did not get all of the words. We cannot be upset with ourselves, right?
Not at all.
Okay, great. So what I want to do now, I was hoping I could launch our next poll, and now I'm curious because I don't know how this is working, because it's not glowing for me anymore. Is that because you're sharing, maybe?
I stopped sharing. You should be good now.
Okay, great. Let's stop sharing that. And now I want to launch our next poll. This question is going to be about, with the information presented today, do you think you'd be able to identify possible mild cognitive impairment in yourself or a loved one? All right. So about 50% who have shared their feelings on this. Give a little bit more time.
I like the possibly and yes answers, because it's not an easy thing to identify. And, sometimes it's hard to even talk about and understand exactly what you're looking for. So I think possibly is a completely legitimate answer. And
I was thinking that too, because even in all of the years that we have been working together to do these head talks, I feel informed. However, this was the first time I think I need to really hone in on what it could look like. And I think every year I get a refresher on what to look for. And I particularly enjoyed this year with things that I can do for myself with memory and things. And so I've taken upon myself to try to do more activities that increase my mental stamina. So yes, we're going to end the poll, and we're about 50-50 at this point. We're looking around. Some people are yes, some people are possibly. The good part about it is no one said no. So I'm very happy about that. That makes me feel really good about where we are. But Corinne, I did get a message about research. Can you answer this question about getting involved in research studies, but not interested in medication trials? Are there any other types of opportunities, and are they only available to people with MCI?
That's a great question. So I think it speaks to that when we think about research, we often think about medication trials or interventions that are looking at the effects of drugs to treat a disease or treat, in this case, we're talking about memory loss. But really, there's many different types of research. There are what are called observational studies, which involve coming in for annual assessments of cognitive abilities and being followed over time, just doing cognitive and clinical assessments and maybe a blood draw. There's brain imaging studies. So for example, MRI for learning about the structure and function of the brain and the connections between different brain regions. And they're of different lengths as well. So some studies, like I mentioned, do ask participants to come in every year. Others might just ask individuals to come in for one visit. So there's many different types of studies. And the second part of the question was about only for participants with MCI. There are a ton of ongoing studies looking at individuals who have no memory concerns in order to understand factors that influence cognitive trajectories as we age, factors that influence brain health, factors that influence a risk of MCI and dementia in the future. So no, the short answer is no. It's not just for individuals with MCI or dementia, but individuals with no memory problems as well. So thank you, whoever asked that question.
Do you have, I'm curious now that that question was asked, do you have any that are going on that we can share? Maybe not today, or that you can maybe put in our go bag?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a number of different ones that are going on. I can share a flyer from the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, which talks about a bunch of different types of studies that are going on. And then we have some studies for individuals with no memory problems, as I mentioned. So absolutely, we can throw that in the go bag.
Okay, great. That's for my own benefit, and they don't have to be local, like to Maryland. I have another question. Can you be anywhere? Can you live anywhere, or how's that?
There are Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers nationwide, and then there's also registries, national registries that can help you find studies if you're interested in participating. And if you are local to Baltimore, we do have a lot of studies ongoing.
Okay. And then there's a question: are there natural products? Are there natural products that can be used to promote brain health?
Oh, the Global Council on Brain Health has a whole report on this. I'll dig it up in just a minute once I'm not being spotlighted on Zoom. But on the use of supplements and vitamins for brain health. And I think that their overall conclusion is that unless you have a deficiency in some sort of vitamin, or that there's no evidence to date that natural products actually boost or are protective against memory. But I'll share that in just a minute.
Okay, great. Okay, everyone. I think Anne is ready, and we are getting ready to do our introduction to Tai Chi. I am so excited because I think that this is going to be an informative and great part of our program. And I'm going to toss it to you. Can you hear us? Because you're still on mute. So I wanted to let you know. You're still on mute. You're still on mute. You're still on mute. There you go.
Okay. So in a minute, I'm going to step back to where I'm going to actually perform, where I'm going to demonstrate what's known as the official 8th form of Tai Chi. But before I start, I want to acknowledge a couple of people who are currently taking Tai Chi and who have taken Tai Chi and are sorority sisters. One is Carolyn Harp. She is our charter member who will celebrate her 92nd birthday early next year and has taken Tai Chi for many, many years. And she has shared those stories with me. So I want you to be aware of that. And when you see Carolyn, keep that in mind, that this almost 92-year-old woman has done Tai Chi for many, many years. I want to acknowledge Crystal Merrow, who has taken Tai Chi from Ping Mao for many years. She's not currently taking Tai Chi now, but she has for many years. And she's with our membership committee. And then I also want to acknowledge Lily Gallant. Lily is currently in one of Ping's beginners classes, Ping being my instructor, our instructor. And he teaches 3 beginners classes at the at the East Columbia 50+ Center, which is going to open the brand new, spanky new building come early February. But Lily is one who will sing praises of Ping, his teaching approach, and the benefits that she's already getting. What I want you to understand about Tai Chi, it's the slow, fluid movements. You have to focus. When you focus on doing these slow, fluid movements, everything else leaves your mind. Because if it doesn't, you're going to mess up. So when you wonder, when people will say, well, I did Tai Chi for a couple of months and it didn't work for me. My question is, how often did you practice? And most people will say, well, I went to class. I said, yeah, but how often did you practice outside of class? You have to practice an average of 10 minutes a day in order to truly get the health benefits. The health benefits are lower stress, your stress level goes down, your memory gets sharper, I guarantee it. I can remember things. My recall might not be immediate, but within a very short time after, I can remember what it is I was trying to remember. I love it when I have those aha moments. And the other thing you'll find is the woulda, shoulda, couldas that we carry around in our brains and boggle ourselves with. You let them go and you move forward in life. Those are some of the health benefits that you get from consistently practicing Tai Chi. Keep that in mind. I use two key words here: consistently practicing Tai Chi. An average of 10 minutes a day will give you those benefits. And the longer you're doing it and getting the benefits, the more likely you are to continue. So that's my little opening for the official 8 form of Tai Chi. I've probably learned at this point about 8 different forms of Tai Chi. My favorite is the 48 form. Absolutely love it. Qigong is the other form of Eastern medicine that Ping also teaches. Deep breathing and slow, subtle movements. A little different than Tai Chi. But the point being, when you're doing both of those in your life, again, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, you let them go. Okay, let me know.
Perfect.
I think you can see my feet. I see
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
Okay, so I am going to start the video only because I'm playing the music, okay, which cues me. Well, now you don't want to act right.
Well, while you're doing
Oops.
that, we do have a message in the chat that says, I can attest to the benefits of Tai Chi. I've been practicing for over 20 years at the Annapolis Senior Activity Center. Thank you so much, Betty, for sharing that. That is remarkable.
Thank you. Oh, we must be in contact with each other. Please put your info.
I love that, Betty. Yes, share your info.
Okay. Give me a minute here.
No problem.
Uh-oh. Okay.
病容松静站立，头正颈直，百会虚领，目视前方，呼吸自然，心平气和。起势，左脚侧开半步，起手，手，卷弓式，两臂画弧，推掌，画弧，推掌，楼膝傲步，重心右移，左捋右推，重心左移，右捋左推，野马分鬃，重心右移，抱球，分掌，重心左移， 倒球，增长，名手，左转，右转，左转，转，左转，右转，金鸡独立，提膝，提手按掌，提膝，提手按掌，蹬脚，提膝，分手蹬脚，提膝，分手蹬脚，揽雀尾，抱球，横，捋，起，按，抱球，横，按，十字手，分手，两手交叉，收势，两臂自然下垂，左脚收回。练功到此结束，祝大家精神愉快，身心健康。
The official 8-4.
Thank you so much, Anne. We have a comment that says, I practiced Tai Chi for a year with Master Lin to assist with strengthening my knee. My posture improved, my breathing was no longer labored, and during the time, I found a sense of peace with movement and navigating life. I know. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I am so glad that you said that you practiced it for a year. It's that sense of peace. One of the things that I sign all of my messages, and you've probably noticed already, Jackie, peace and happiness always.
Yes.
And that comes from the lifestyle that you create when you're doing Tai Chi for a period of time. My question to the person put the statement in the chat, why did you stop after a year?
Oh, I guess we'll find out.
I also do yoga. So it was.
You also do yoga.
I also practice yoga. So it was a wellness. My holistic doctor put a wellness package together, and Tai Chi was a part of it. So it was yoga and Tai Chi. Tai Chi in the morning, yoga in the afternoon, for a year.
I actually did both yoga and Tai Chi for 8 years. And then eventually I started doing just Tai Chi. I found the benefits for me. I say whatever form works for you, Eastern medicine is so beneficial. When you look at Tai Chi, we're talking about a practice that started over 1,000 years ago. So whatever it is that works for you, do that. And I found for me the benefits of Tai Chi. By the way, I don't take any medication, only vitamins, only vitamin supplements.
Well, join us next year for Anne's Living Longer Whole Master talk. Check that.
My fingers crossed this trend continues.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne. Really appreciate that. We hope everyone enjoyed it. Before we toss it over to our soror for our closing, we'd like to announce our winner of our raffle. We had set out to provide a raffle winner for the first 50 registrants. And I like to announce that Juliet Jenkins, you're actually here today, which I was very happy to see. So we are gifting you a month subscription to attend the Tai Chi class. So you can go to the classes. We'll connect with you after this session. Congratulations, and thank you for actually attending on top of registering. So we really appreciate it. Hope you're excited.
I am. Thank you so much. This has
And we
been
look forward to
excellent.
the book report about how you enjoyed it next year.
Okay.
Kidding. Okay. And thank you so much again to all of our presenters. I'd like to now toss it over to our soror from the Annapolis chapter and Joanne Cimprio. Her recognitions include Kaplan Mid-Atlantic Teacher of the Year, Annapolis Alumni Chapter Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Delta Deer of the Year, Board Member of Anne Arundel County HIV and AIDS Commission, St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church Parish Council President, Anne Arundel County Her Story Award, and Charter Member of Iota Iota Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority at Catholic University of America, and the Charter Member of the Glen Burnie Chapter of Jack and Jill of America. Of all her accomplishments, and I love this part the most, is why I'm going to read it. She is most proud of being a mother of Kia and Courtney Cimprio and wife to Dr. Lawrence Cimprio. So I'm going to toss the floor to you, Joanne. I think you're still on mute.
Thank you. You have the slides up.
Ma'am.
Slide. Okay. Okay, I want to thank everyone for participating this evening, and I feel absolutely certain that you got at least one thing, if not many, many more, out of this wonderful presentation. And if we want to take steps to keep your brain healthy. 10 ways to keep your brain healthy, your mental health. We went through that very well, how to look after the things that you do, practice self-care, take time to breathe, slow down. Habits, make sure that you have healthy habits. If you're smoking, give it up. If you can't give it up, reduce it. Drinking, want to monitor that. Challenge, you want to engage in challenging mental health activities, eat a well-balanced, healthy diet, and a physical health diet and a cardiac diet are also good for the brain. You want to stay connected socially, and I think Anne pointed that out very well with the art things. Keep learning. You're never too old to learn. Learning is an ongoing process, and when you stop learning, you stop living. Make sure you get adequate sleep. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Stay hydrated and continue to exercise. Okay, your summary, you want to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease and maintain health and well-being through quality sleep, proper diet, exercise, and reduced stress. Looking closely is a key to living healthier and longer, and consider taking a Tai Chi class. And thank you all again for participating. As I said, I think everyone has gained something. And thank you to the partners in this wonderful program. And Jackie, you always do a good job in pulling this together for all of us. I'm happy to be a part of it. And so proud of all my soros who supported us and everybody else that supported us too. But thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.